Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show.
Greetings, one and all, and welcome to another episode of the Newfangled Motion Picture Show. I am your host, Niall.
And I'm your host, Nolan.
And today we're going to be reviewing The Good Liar. We're going to be doing our normal thing where we do a spoiler-free review. And boy howdy is there some spoilers, potentially, for this movie. And then we'll be giving you a spoiler warning, and then going more in-depth into the movie after that. But yeah, there's some big spoilers. So anyway, so this movie stars Helen Mirren and Ian McKellen, and with a cast like that, how can you possibly go wrong?
Yeah, you can't really. They were basically the reason we were interested in the movie to begin with.
Yeah. And it's I mean, it's hard to say much about this movie without spoiling things.
But it's a movie about con games.
Yep. And it's, you understand going into it, it's a pretty slow movie. And it's at times a pretty tense movie, as you're like waiting for someone in the room to figure out if it's a con or whatever. But yeah, just know going into it, it's a pretty slow-paced movie, which is fine, because I think that for the story it's telling, it works out well.
Yeah. But I enjoyed this movie. I think if you're into movies about con games and, you know, suspense and thriller movies, you'd probably enjoy the movie.
Yep. I mean, we're definitely into those things. And I also really enjoyed this movie. It was basically the movie I was expecting it to be, although I wasn't necessarily expecting, like, the end result to turn out the way it did. But as far as, like, the pacing and the kind of movie it was exactly what I thought it was going to be going into it.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job on the editing the trailers for this.
I agree. So, like you said, there's not a whole lot we can get into without really spoiling things. Just so yeah, like we said, it's about about a con job, and that's all you really need to know going into it.
Yeah.
You know, I think probably the less you know going into it, the better. The more enjoyment you'll get out of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And crap, what was I gonna say about that? I had something to follow it up with. And it just left my mind. Damn, don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is definitely not a movie that you should feel the need to see in theaters. I recommend you do, just because I think this movie deserves to do well, but...
Yeah, if you're on the fence, you can definitely wait till it's on Netflix or something.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not... There's no big set pieces or, you know, visual effects or anything like that.
Nope.
So I guess we can get into our spoiler section.
Yeah, so henceforth, our spoilers.
Yeah. So, Ian McKellen is the con man in this, but from the beginning, you're not sure. It kind of hints and then confirmed later on that Helen Mirren is conning him. And you start maybe getting a little hints of that here and there. And then it's kind of confirmed later in the movie when they're on vacation in Berlin and she visits this house out of nowhere. You don't know why she's there. But the fact that she goes there and it's secretive, then you start suspecting there's something more going on. and then but after that, it starts focusing on her facial expressions, you know, when his back is turned, and you start to really suspect that she's conning him at the end. And so she's a widow who's has a significant amount of money, like close to £3 million, and he shows up and meets her online, and he's trying to get into a position where she will he has a partner who poses as an investment banker, and so the plan is that they would have a joint account and invest in these, put the money into these investments that give these crazy returns, like they double their money in a matter of months or whatever. And says, well, if we do it as a joint account, it helps with the taxes, so we get to keep more of it, or something like that is the reasoning behind it. It's not entirely clear, but and so when they get in the joint account together, she winds up taking his money instead of the other way around. But it all turns out to be revenge.
Or Ian McKellen.
Yeah, so when he was 15 and she was, I don't know, 13 or something maybe, they were both children in Germany.
In the 40s.
In the 40s. And he was her
early 40s.
Yeah, he was her English tutor, and he raped her. And then
he tattled on her father to the Gestapo, presumably.
Yeah, and her father was killed. Her father owned a factory, and so the tattle was revenge because before raping her, he had tried to force himself on one of her sisters. She's got like 3 sisters, and anyway,
they
kind of humiliated him.
They kind of embarrassed him along the way. I mean, it was pretty light embarrassment. He definitely took that. He was definitely a creeper from the beginning. Like, he just looked like a creeper.
Yeah,
sitting in there.
And so, their father fired him, and so he told the Gestapo or whatever. So
he had heard that his father was planning to slow down production of his factory. It kind of hinted that he was trying to, hurt the war effort. So he told the Gestapo or whomever about that, and they got him killed. The girl's mother killed herself out of grief. And and then
it implied that she and her sisters had to become prostitutes or something to survive.
They were running their house as a boarding house, she said.
Yeah, but she never came out and said it, but I got the impression she kind of implied. She's like, you do. She said it has a line about you're so surprising what you will do in order to survive another day, in order to do the same things over again and stuff. And I kind of got the impression that as young women in that position, that sort of thing happens. So I kind of got the impression that maybe they had turned to prostitution.
Yeah, but then her sisters were all killed in a bomb blast during the siege of Berlin. And then the
Russians came.
She says, and then the Russians came, and that's all she says about that. And that's really,
yeah. Well, if you know anything about that, she was probably raped by the Russians.
Yeah.
Somehow, though, she changed her name and moved to England and married a successful man because she was wound up with a lot of money. And if you saw the house she was living in, like her house at the end on the property they were on was pretty big piece of property. So but she her grandson's partner he helped her find Ian McKellen's character, who was he had also changed his name. After the war, he was partnered with a British intelligence officer, and they were hunting down Nazis. And that other guy got killed, and so he assumed that guy's identity and moved to England, and has been living as him for the last 60 years, or 70 years. Because this takes place in 2009.
So, yeah, it would have been about 60 years then.
Yeah, so anyway, because it was a few years after the war that happened.
Yeah, I think they said it was 3 years.
Yeah.
After the war.
Anyway, so she put this whole scheme together to get revenge on him.
All gets revealed at the end, like the sting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like, to me the big reveal wasn't that Helen Mirren was, conning Ian McKellen's character.
Kind of had figured that out by that point.
It was the reveal of
why.
Yeah, why. So
see, at first I thought it was just she was also a con artist and they were taking him for his money. What I was trying to figure out is, obviously his partner was in on it, or became in on it at some point, and you realize that had to be the case before the movie reveals it. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how long has he been part of this scam, and why did he betray Ian McKellen, and all that. So apparently not too long into the scheme, and they blackmailed him into it because they had evidence that he was involved in a lot of fraud and crimes, and so he would have been arrested and whatnot. They were gonna reveal that if he didn't go along with it.
But yeah, so
yeah.
It kind of, now that I think about it, it kind of reminds me of The Sting.
Not as lighthearted.
Not as lighthearted, no, but just like the idea of like this conning the con man, and then they reveal how they did it at the end.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much it for The Good Liar. If you're into that kind of movie, I recommend checking it out. Like I said, it is a pretty slow burn, but for the type of story that's being told, it works out well. But anyway, so what's our next movie, Nolan?
Frozen 2.
Frozen 2, yep. We also have 21 Bridges is next week. That looks interesting.
Yeah.
It's got J.K. Simmons in it.
Yep, and Chadwick Boseman.
Yep. And then the week after that, which is Thanksgiving weekend, is Knives Out. A Rian Johnson whodunit, as the trailer says. And then I think the first weekend in December is the only weekend we have this, what's left of this year, without a movie in it. But it gets made up for the following week when there's Jumanji, Richard Jewell, and Uncut Gems all come out in the same week.
Yeah.
And then
Star Wars.
And then obviously Star Wars. Nolan's gonna see Cats by himself.
No.
In an empty theater. Because he's the only one excited for it.
Not true. I've seen some people online who are excited for it.
So you admit you're excited for it then?
I didn't
say that. You heard it here, folks.
I didn't say that.
Nolan said he is also excited for Cats. And then we have 1917, which looks really good. That's the weekend after Christmas. And that rounds out the year for us. And then we get into that weird, like, beginning of the year where there's just, like, sort of a weird mishmash of different movies.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of them.
Bad Boys for Life.
Yeah, I should probably watch the first two Bad Boys movies before I see that.
You ain't seen Bad Boys 2?
Nope. I've definitely seen Hot
Clips.
Fuzz. I've definitely seen Hot Fuzz a number of times, which is what that's referencing. And Doolittle. I don't know how I feel about that Doolittle movie, man. I would have more faith in it if it were a Disney movie. Because, you know, like, I think they've got the talking animal thing figured out. But it, oof. It doesn't look real great, does it?
I don't know. Might be okay.
Yeah, I don't know. That
Doesn't look as good as Jungle Cruise.
Jungle Cruise looks great. I'm excited for Jungle Cruise. What's the release date for that? That's not till July. Oh dear.
That's a ways off.
That is a ways away. But that movie looks really cool, actually, surprisingly. So, but yeah, that's what we got coming up. So if any of that sounds of interest to you, you know, hit that subscribe button so you can tell when we post new stuff or whatever. What was our last review, Nolan?
Ford v Ferrari.
Ford v Ferrari. That was a good review. You should check out that review. Solid review of that movie. And we also recently did Midway. I think the review of that is also really good, and you should check out that review. That's all I'm going to say about that movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, so until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Toodles.